You know, the problem with determining whether you have a painkiller addiction problem is that most of the time those prescription painkillers are a prescription by a licensed physician, and therefore a legitimate need, like a post-surgery or injury or something of that nature. So there was a legitimate need for the medication to begin with. But over time, you may be getting indications that, maybe this is not at a healthy level. Maybe I've got a dependency here. You may have people around you that are beginning to suggest or confront you with the problem of addiction. Now, the fact is that most commonly prescribed medications, including OxyContin, Vicodin, Darvocet, Lortab, Lorset, Percocet, Dilaudid, Demerol, they all offer relief from pain, but they can cause a person's body to start needing or requiring the drug in order to feel normal. And the result is a terribly challenging situation called chemical dependency. And so today I want us to look at some warning signs of that chemical dependency to know when a legitimate need has turned into an addictive need for the drug. First of all, I'd like to look at the increased usage. That's the characteristic of an increased tolerance for the medication. Tolerance is when it takes more and more of the drug to accomplish the same effect. Now, tolerance is also equivalent with addiction, because when it takes more and more to achieve the same effect, what that means is when you come off the drug, there will be a withdrawal effect as well. So tolerance is a clear indication of addiction, physiological addiction to the drug. A second characteristic is a change in personality. One's normal behavior changes so that you see shifts in energy, mood, concentration, and everyday responsibilities become secondary to the need for the relief that the prescription medication provides. A third characteristic is social withdrawal. A person experiencing a dependency problem often withdraws from many family, friends, and other social interaction. What they withdraw to, maybe to themselves, but also they tend to associate with people who have a common purpose, a common priority as they do, and that is acquiring that drug. And the reasons for that is word gets around that you can go to this doctor, or you can go to that website, or you can go to this source on the street. And so they develop these new relationships, and those relationships become smaller and smaller as their use becomes greater and greater. So social withdrawal is the third characteristic. The fourth characteristic is ongoing use. And what do we mean by that? Well, let's say you have a surgery or an injury, and the doctor prescribes you a pain medication. At the end of that prescription, you want to go back and ask that doctor for more. And a lot of times these days they won't write that prescription. They'll refer you to a pain management specialist. But if they do write that prescription, it's hesitantly, and you go back for yet another prescription. And then when they don't give you the prescription, you go shopping for a different doctor. And when your tolerance grows, you shop for more doctors and looking for online. And so this ongoing use after the normal prescribed period is considered a sign of addiction. That leads us to the fifth characteristic, and that's the time spent on obtaining prescriptions. Now, that time spent is also efforts spent. What this means is that a priority has been put on securing a supply for the medication, securing a supply of this drug. And the reason for that is because that addiction craves it. That addiction demands that you have it. And so you're constantly thinking ahead and making sure that, you may not be making sure that you're your kids have the food that they need or the clothes that they need to wear or whatever, but you're darn sure that you're going to have plenty of that drug on hand, and you go to almost any lengths to get that drug, and that is an indication of an inordinate value or priority placed on that drug. Another characteristic is a change in your daily habits or appearance. Personal hygiene may diminish as a result of a drug addiction. Sleeping and eating habits could change, and a person may even have a constant cough or a runny nose and red or glazed eyes from the overuse of and abuse of painkiller medications. The seventh characteristic is that person may neglect responsibilities. A dependent person may call in sick more often. They may arrive late because they're having a hard time getting started in the morning. They could neglect household chores, bills, and the reason it has to do with a pattern that they've fallen into. They're spending so much time and effort focusing on getting that drug, that medication, and when they get it, they immediately seek that euphoric state, that numb state, that state of intoxication, and so it's either one's life is spent in either search of the medication or numbed out and intoxicated, and one's responsibilities are neglected. Another characteristic is increased sensitivity to normal sights, sounds, and emotions that become overly stimulating to a person and can create an irritability, causes them to lash out perhaps at people. Another characteristic is blackouts and forgetfulness. Now, this is a very clear sign of a physiological addiction, that the tolerance the person has generated is so high that they, in order to achieve the necessary blood serum level of the drug, they go into what is basically an anesthetic state, so that they are still functioning, they're still walking around, they're still doing things, but they have no conscious memory of what has taken place. And these blackouts indicate a serious dependency has already developed. The last characteristic that I want to talk about is kind of an insidious one. It can be baffling to the friends and family members around the person, and that's defensiveness. One's denial system kicking in to protect the addiction. And whether they realize it or not, whether they're hiding it consciously, hiding their addiction consciously, or they are, or it's subconscious, but at any rate, the drug has become so important to them that they immediately, knowingly or unknowingly, defend it and get reactive, emotionally reactive when anyone attempts to suggest that there might be an addiction. You don't understand, you don't know what it's like to have this kind of pain, etc. This defensiveness is always accompanies addiction to prescription painkiller medications. Prescriptions to pain medication can be safe when taken according to a doctor's instructions and carefully monitored. But it's important to realize that these drugs can be very dangerous. In Oklahoma, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, announced that we have more deaths due to prescription painkillers than any other state on a per capita basis in the United States. If you're beginning to see, looking at these warning signs, that you may have a prescription painkiller addiction, I'd invite you to either call the number that is listed after this video or go to our website and find out more information. There is help out there. Medication-assisted treatment, that's a SAMHSA evidence-based best practice identified by our federal government to be a best practice for treating opioid addiction, can often avoid inpatient detox, go straight into outpatient medication-assisted treatment, and avoid the high cost of inpatient treatment, avoid being away from your job, your family, and disrupting your household. We have that ability, and there is hope for you. Please give us a call or come by our website.